All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic. It is Monday, October 24th, around 10 a.m. And it's obviously been an interesting 48 hours for the Miami Hurricanes. They are now 3-4 after a rather embarrassing defeat to the Duke Blue Devils at home. Their third straight loss. They haven't had a 3-game losing streak at home since 2007 when they closed out the Orange Bowl. I remember being there for that 48-0 Virginia loss and thinking to myself, man, it may not ever get any worse than this. Boy, was I wrong. The next 15 years have been just awesome, haven't they? Andrew Ferrelli of the South Florida Express is back on with me for today's episode. Andrew, thanks for coming back on. You obviously have a lot of great insights into recruiting and being part of the South Florida Express. You know a lot of the players, the top recruits, some guys that are actually at Miami. Let's start with this. What's without naming names and putting anybody on blast? What are some of the guys at Miami maybe telling you about the change from Manny Diaz to Mario Cristobal and how it's going?
Yeah, I mean it's about what everyone from the outside is seeing as well. A lot of it with Manny was he just wanted to be their best friend, especially if you were one of the better players on the team. He was just more concerned with wanting to be your friend than being your disciplinarian and your coach. So guys would miss meetings, miss practices, miss curfew, nights before games, stuff like that, and just still be thrown right out there as the starters next day with really no punishment or anything like that. Um, he was all about just kind of being friendly with the players, wanting to be liked, wanting to be a player's coach. Um, and it's definitely a big change coming in with Mario and the culture that he's trying to bring in, with wanting to be a disciplinarian, having everything, exactly how he wants it. A disciplined team, a tough team, no missing meetings, no missing practices, anything like that. How it should be. And some of the guys just aren't taking to that change too well. It's going to take a year or so to get some of those guys out of the program. I think you'll see a lot of players going in and out of the portal this offseason from Miami into Miami, just as Mario kind of tries to overhaul this roster and really get rid of some of the guys that don't necessarily fit his culture and bring in a lot of guys that more about what thinking how he is.
It's pretty much what I thought right after the Middle Tennessee State loss. It looked to me like a team that was being resistant to their head coach when they lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think while they've given, good effort for the most part, even in some of these losses, this last game against Duke, it really looked like they quit on him in the fourth quarter and they just stopped playing, which is something different than what we saw from Manny Diaz, right, over the last 6 games of the season. So we kind of gotten to that interesting point, Andrew, where we know these kids, these modern day players. Do you have to be a more friendly guy or do you have to be a hard ass? And which one works? Because I look at it and I say, well, Nick Saban's kind of been a hard ass his whole career, right? And he's won national titles doing it that way. I don't know how Ryan Day is. I haven't been up to Ohio State. I've never met Ryan. I don't know what his reputation is as far as being a player friendly coach or a hard ass. But it's obvious this is the way Mario's going to do things. He signed here for, the next 10 years, $80 million, going to get paid a lot of money to fix this. Um, what do you think South Florida kids are saying? What do you think recruits are saying about all this?
I mean, to answer your first question, I think you got to be a little bit of a hard ass. I think if you just let the players get away with everything, you end up with an undisciplined team, a team that doesn't really go out there and perform the way you like. I think you got to be a little bit of a hard ass, but I think it definitely takes more than 7 games to adjust from one coach that was so far on the opposite side of the spectrum to what Mario is trying to create. Um, Speaking to some of the recruits and stuff, they're all totally bought in. I know people are saying, 3 and 4, we're going to see a bunch of kids decommit. I don't think that's going to be the case. I know, starting at the top of the class, Francis Mauigoa, he's bought in. His family, they want him here. They're like, Miami could go 0-12. We want him there, being coached by Mario, developed by him and Maribel. And I think a lot of the guys in the class are kind of following him. In terms of the South Florida guys, Ray Joseph and the Washington Twins are kind of leading that charge. They're all very bought in. Um, Mario really has this next class set on coming in. I think he's, they see the writing on the wall. They see this what's on the field right now, the roster. Um, a lot of them are looking to come in and take jobs right away. I don't think they're scared to come in and be under Mario and his culture. I think they're looking forward to that, and he has them bought in and ready to come in and compete for starting jobs next year.
Miami's recruiting class is 11th in the country after the re-ranking of the players by 247 recently. He's got a great class he's put together so far. We know he's going to go heavy into the transfer portal here. I'm expecting probably a flip of 30 to 35, maybe even up to 40 players that are on this roster right now to next year. Am I being conservative or am I being too aggressive in those estimates?
No, I think that's a pretty fair estimate. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see, that 40-ish number, close to half the roster being flipped. Like you said, they've got a great class right now. They're 11th in the country with, I think they have the least commits of anyone in the top 15. They still haven't accounted for Antoine Jackson, who's reclassifying for Dillard, who's a top 100 player in that 2024 class. He's going to be a 2023. So that'll probably bump him back up into the top 10 there. But no, I think you'll see a huge flip of the roster with going heavy in the portal, especially. If you look, arguably the two best players on each side of the ball right now have all been guys that Mario brought in through the portal. On the defense, you have Mesidor, who might be the best player on the team, and Jackson, the defense tackle. Both of them have been studs, came out of the portal. And then on offense, your best running back's Henry Parrish, and it looks like Colby Young is passing up everyone as the best receiver. So two best players on each side of the ball are guys that Mario brought in from the portal in the couple of months he was here before the season. I think this just kind of goes to show, what the roster was looking like when he came in. And I think you'll see them kind of really go in and try to flip a much bigger portion of that roster this offseason. So I think that 40-ish number isn't, overshooting or anything. I think you could see a very large flip in the roster this year.
Well, look, you've already got a lot of 5th and 6th year guys, right? In terms of seniors and transfers and guys that may just end up entering the portal because they haven't played a whole lot or whatever. And there's younger guys in front of them. You know a lot of these kids. Is there any, rumors of guys that you think will definitely be gone, that will not be, staying, younger guys? Have you heard any of that with the 2022 class or the 2021 class? Any guys that, in terms of names that you've heard of that might be departing?
Not necessarily, not any big names from those two classes that I've heard. Obviously we've seen Eshawn Smith's and his mother with some frustration on Twitter.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone that enters the portal, especially, he's seen some reduced playing time over the last couple weeks, especially with the emergence of Colby Young, Jacoby George coming back. It seems like he kind of got passed up, and especially with the fumbles on special teams and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if his playing time continues to decrease, and if he's someone that hits the portal. Other than that, I haven't heard too many names specifically, but I'm sure as we get closer to that December 4th date when they can get in the portal, you'll start to see a lot more names either choosing to leave or kind of being, kindly shown the door.
Right. This is what happens at a lot of places. Mike Norvell basically flipped his roster at Florida State. He's just not as good a recruiter as Mario, right? He's had to really depend on the transfer portal for most of his guys, hasn't been able to hit. Ultimately here, do you think Miami has to hit a certain number of wins? Do you think they have to be bowl eligible maybe to hold on to this class? Right now, ESPN's only given them, I think, a 37 or 38% shot at even winning 6 games and being bowl eligible at this point, come December. What are your thoughts on the class sticking together, and is it going to take a certain number of wins?
Obviously it'd be nice to get to a bowl in his first year. That's the one thing Miami's kind of avoided that Florida and Florida State haven't, is that year without making a bowl. So it'd be nice to get bowl eligible. Honestly, I think even if they go 5-7, I don't see that many guys dropping off. Like you said, I know Francis is bought in. He's kind of the leader of the class. Rashad is bought in. A lot of the South Florida guys are bought in. I think Malik Bryant might be someone. If you're going to look at one of the higher end guys that might look elsewhere, I think he could be someone that may not be as committed towards the top end of that class. Other than that, except maybe losing, maybe one of the bottom of the 3 tight ends that they have, or one of the 2 quarterbacks, which we've been talking about for months now. I think all the main guys in that class are pretty bought in, regardless of record. I think, like I said, Mario has them bought in. They're ready to come in. They want to start right away. And I think a lot of them will. Just seeing what's on the team right now, I believe Francis will walk on here, be a 3-year starter and head to the NFL. And I think that's the mindset that a lot of these guys coming in have.
That's good for Mario. That's good for the Hurricanes, obviously, that they feel that way. Why is it, do you think Mario is able to connect with recruits, and yet these players, the ones that are here, are not? I mean, is it just because they were recruited to a different mentality? What's kind of, you think, missing there, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the guys on the roster have already been with Manny for the last 2, 3 years, 4 years, some of them 5 years. With the COVID year, there's guys that are fifth,
Right.
sixth, seventh year seniors.
Right.
Um, so I think a lot of the guys just got so used to that culture, and just having a coach that wants to be your friend and not, having to work as hard, not having to, if you miss a meeting or you leave a practice or whatever the case may be, it's not a big deal. Whereas when Mario comes in, it's the complete opposite. I think it's definitely a big adjustment, and some of the guys on the roster that have been used to just being, call it babied the last 3, 4, 5 years, aren't taken to that well. And I think you see that, especially with a lot of the South Florida kids, that stay down here. Some of them get a little bit complacent, especially with if you have a coaching staff that wants to be friendly with them, not really pushing them. You see them just kind of, they're hanging out. Hey, I'm still the star here in my hometown. I'm going to go back to my high school every Thursday night, Friday night for the game, where everyone's going to tell me how great I was. And I think when you have a coach like Mario come in, and he's not going to put up with that. You're going to work your butt off regardless of if you were a 4-star, 5-star from South Florida or a 3-star from California. And I think it's going to take a year to really push everything out, that's been kind of built up over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
There are some guys, obviously Miami is still on. We haven't had you on in a while because it's been a very sort of quiet period, right? In recruiting, most of these guys are playing their season. Yes, some guys have taken trips and been on campuses elsewhere, and come and watched Hurricanes games. But for the most part, nobody's making any real decisions here because it feels like everybody's sort of waiting. Well, what's going to happen with staff, right? Who's going to leave? What coaches are going to go on for their jobs, etc. So, but there will be an announcement, I think, at the end of this week, right? Cormani McLean, who of course played with you guys, he's at Lakeland, one of the top cornerbacks, if not the top cornerback in the country, according to 247, number 2 player overall. I know the word on the street, it's probably going to be the Florida Gators. Miami was in it for a while. Personally, I think Cormani probably just wants to stay closer to home, right, with his mom. And is that kind of the read you're getting as well?
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't UF as the choice here on the 27th. Everything I've heard over the last week has been that's where he's going. And yeah, they've done a good job recruiting him. Obviously, that Lakeland, Polk County area always has been very, very UF heavy. Cormani's very close with his mom. Staying home was a big thing for him. And also the Pouncey twins have been very involved there. It's kind of, just helping him out with his recruitment. They're close with the mom as well, helping her out with their recruitment. So I think just as all that kind of transpired, UF really pulled away towards the end. I'd be very surprised if they weren't the pick here on Thursday.
You mentioned Samson Okunlola earlier, the 5-star offensive tackle who Miami has been after, obviously from Braintree, Massachusetts. A guy that they kind of want to pair, obviously, with Francis and make them your bookend offensive tackles. What's the latest with him, and how good of a shot do you give the Hurricanes here?
They still feel very good about him. I was talking to some people around late last week, and they still feel very good about Samson. They feel like they've got a pretty good lead there. They're expecting Ohio State to probably make a push as we get closer to signing day, closer to decision day. But everything that I've heard from and from people around him, all seems like Miami's pretty firmly in the lead there with Samson still. So obviously you get him on board with Francis, and that solves a lot of problems on the ends of your offensive line for the next 3 years, 4 years.
Couple of pass rushers they were in on that are elite kids, 5-star kids. Damon Wilson out of Venice, Samuel Mpemba out of IMG Academy. I think I'd heard Samuel was probably going to Florida at one point. What's sort of the latest with both of those guys?
Damon Wilson, I don't think Miami's too active in that one anymore. It seems like that one he's probably going to go to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like they've done a good job there. He's gotten up there a couple of times. Seems like they've pulled away there. And that's for Mpemba. Unfortunately, I don't think that one's going Miami's way as well. I haven't heard Florida as much recently. It seems like Georgia's really kind of become the team to beat for him. I think that's where I'd expect him to end up.
All right. And Ruben Bain, everything was pointing towards Auburn here of late, out of Miami Central. I know he knows the defensive line coach there, has a good relationship with him through family. But Auburn may have an entire coaching staff change as well. So what's the latest with Ruben?
I've heard the Auburn rumors. I know he went out there with a bunch of coaches and stuff like that from DEF CON and Central and everything like that, a bunch of players. Um, I still think Miami's the team to beat there. I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up with Miami. His brother's on the staff. His old high school coaches are on the staff. He's got all the family ties to UM. He spent, seemed like every other day during this offseason on campus at UM. He talks to the coaches a ton. I know Auburn's made a good push there. Obviously, I don't think Brian Harsin survives the season, which is another reason that I think Miami wins out there. But I'd still put Miami in the lead for Ruben Bain, who's had a dominant season so far.
Yeah, he's
times for Central, and he's been incredible.
Yeah, two other local guys I wanted to ask you about on the defensive side. Stanquan Clark, who's committed to Louisville, the linebacker out of Miami Central, and then Damari Brown, who's obviously a legacy. His father, Selwyn, played for the Hurricanes. You know, I know he went to Florida State recently. And where does Miami stand with those two defensive guys that are very good players?
Damari Brown, I think it's gonna come down to how his official visit goes. He was the guy that I think if they had had a better start to the season, they could have had locked up already. He was planning to officially visit earlier in the year, possibly commit earlier in the year, and then things start not looking as well. He went and visited FSU. He was actually at Alabama this past weekend, and then but he'll be officially visiting Miami for that Miami FSU game in a couple weeks. So I think if Miami has a good showing there, everything goes right with the official visit. You know, he could end up there, but it seems like going into that official visit, all things are pretty even among Miami, FSU, and Alabama right now. And then as for Stanquan Clark, I know Miami's done a good job there. I think if they were to flip anyone from another team, he might be the guy with the highest possibility to do so. They talk to him a lot. They feel really good about flipping him from Louisville, and who's, you know, another program where not having a great season. Satterfield, it's just a matter of time till he's fired as well. So I think he's another kid that'll probably end up at Miami. From Miami Central, I think him and Ruben Bain will end up there together.
And then two other kids locally I wanted to ask you about. Christopher Johnson, who I think at one point was going to commit to Miami out of Dillard, the running back, who I watched in person, super explosive. I think he's more of a pass catcher, a guy that you involved in the passing game. And then Edwin Joseph, who played with you guys at SFE for a little while, 3-star kid out of Chaminade that has really had a phenomenal season for Chaminade. What about those two guys?
Oh yeah, like you said, Chris Johnson, he's another one. It seems like he was all set to give it to Miami. I know he had some of the recruiting sites make him his commitment and everything like that back then. And then some other schools jumped on board, started recruiting him harder, and he kind of pushed everything back. He's another one that I think will be taking an official visit for the FSU game. He said he just wants to see improvement over these next few games. I think he's a kid where how Miami finishes out this season will impact that recruitment a lot. I think if they finish out 6-7 wins, hopefully beat FSU, he's a kid that'll jump on board. If not, if they end up in that 5-7 range, I think he might look elsewhere. And then as for Edwin, Miami's biggest thing is they got to get him to take an official visit. He's been down here a lot, been at a ton of the home games already. He was at Louisville this past weekend. I think them, South Carolina, and Penn State are all pushing hard. He was at Penn State a couple weeks ago. I think they're definitely towards the top right now. He's another one that I think his official visit's got to go really well, or I think he'll look possibly Penn State or Louisville.
Who are some other guys that, if you're a Miami fan, you should be keeping an eye on here from now until December?
Ooh,
I don't know if I hit you with one that was too loaded there, but I mean, I kind of went over the main names that I've kind of marked down as, okay, I got to watch what's going on with these guys.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, the ones we went over are definitely the biggest names that are left for them. You have Des Ricks reclassifying. He's going to be a 2023. He was the best cornerback in that 2024 class.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard the best rumblings about him in Miami lately. Seems like it's shaping up to be a LSU, Florida, and possibly FSU battle. But Miami was obviously in there a lot early, took a lot of visits to Miami, played with that Miami Immortal 7-on-7 team that had Jaden Rashad, a couple other Miami commits on it. So they'll definitely try to make a push there. Outside of that, I think it's just trying to close on some of those guys you mentioned, especially Samson Akinlola. I think you got to get another corner or two, hopefully Damari Brown or Edwin Joseph. And then I don't think they want to take more than maybe 2022 kids in this class, and just really hammer the portal going into next year.
Yeah, I mean, you can go, I think, up to 7 over, right? With transfers, and maybe you can add a couple more depending on how many you lose. But I expect there to be lots of scholarships open, right? And Mario to use them as best he sees fit. I think the areas where we could definitely see instant impact type transfers, I think the offensive line is one area you'd have to consider. I think running back you'd have to consider as well. I know Trevante Citizen is coming off of an ACL injury. Obviously Don Chaney Jr. is coming back off an ACL. We don't know if he's going to be around. Jalen Knighton's had fumbleitis for the last few weeks. And it just seems like, there's a lot of transition in that position. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some changes there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to have to replace some defensive linemen that you brought in this last cycle. So I don't know. Those are just a couple of areas I think we'll see some movement. What's your opinion?
No, I agree. Especially at running back. If Citizen comes back and he's anywhere near what he was before the injury, he's going to be a star. If he hadn't gotten injured, he would have. I would not be surprised if him and Parrish were the top two backs right now on this team. If he hadn't gotten injured before the year, he was just incredible when he came in camp. But yeah, I think on the defense side of the ball, probably see some defensive linemen. You've got some young guys that they like. Nigel Kelly is flash as a freshman. Wesley Basant at linebacker is flash as a freshman. But there's still a lot of holes that you've got to fill. At corner, I'm sure they're going to have to pull some guys, especially if they miss out on a Damari Brown and Edwin Joseph. I think you're definitely going to have to hit the portal for some experienced corners with Tyreek Stevenson and DJ Ivey leaving. Doesn't leave you a whole lot behind them. And then if you get Francis and Samson, I think you're pretty set at the tackles. But definitely I think get some guards. But there's a lot of holes on this team to put it nicely.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of spots where they're going to have to hit the portal.
Yeah. What about the SFE kids for 2024? You guys obviously have a super talented team. There's several top 24 kids that play for you guys, and curious what the banter is about the Hurricanes now.
It hasn't been great of late. Obviously they're 2024, they still got a while left. But a lot of them have been disappointed in the season. A lot of those kids all played together down here growing up, all with the Miami Gardens Ravens, grew up as fans. It seemed like that class was really looking for a reason to kind of stay home and stay together. There's kids like Chance Robinson, JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith, Antoine Jackson, who's reclassifying to 2023. So hopefully him coming in here early will help with those kids. But it seems like that group of just top athletes in 2024, they're all very close down here. We're looking for a reason to come to Miami. And so far just hasn't given them that, hasn't shown them a reason to come here. Hopefully things change if they finish out the season strong or have, a great 2024 season next year. 2023 season next year. Things can change, but right now, for a group of kids that love to Miami and everything like that, they've been pretty disappointed with the performance this far.
Yeah, I gotta imagine. What does your gut tell you here, man? The rest of the way, what do you think happens from here to December? Who do you think Miami adds? Who do you think they hang on to?
I think they hold on to most of the class. Like I said, if any of the top guys were to leave, probably be Malik Bryant. Other than that, I think that top portion of the class is pretty locked in. As for who they add, they're at 17 right now. You'll get Anquan Jackson Adder, so he'll be commit number 18. Still feel good about Ruben Bain. Still feel good about Samson. That puts you right about 20. I think they flip Stanquan Clark. That puts us at 21. And then hopefully get Damari or maybe someone else at DB. That puts you at that 22, 23 number. and just kind of wrap it up there and then hit the portal.
All right. Best case scenario. That's probably what we're hoping for. They need as much help as they can get. And I think ultimately playing time, a lot of these kids, if they're smart, they're looking at it saying, I can get on the field quickly.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of positions where these guys can come in and play right away. And I think that's one of the things that Mario sold them on from the start. Especially if you're an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a receiver, a cornerback. There's a lot of positions where you can step on the field next year and have a good chance to either start or play an awful lot of true freshmen.
Yeah. Andrew, I appreciate you checking in, brother. Hopefully the season doesn't get any worse because I can't deal with the Twitter mafia and the anger. It's driving me kind of crazy.
Yeah, at least the Dolphins are playing well. Yesterday was Sunday helped make Saturday a little bit better.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's to a better finish and a little bit more peace in South Florida.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.